Welcome to the Guest Perception Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, my lovely co-host, Amanda Hansen. Man, it's been a real rough week. I've had a rough week. I got to admit. I made a post today, and my post today was to get uncomfortable and really just momentum. You know, I think in those times of where we are experiencing, difficulty, I think it's important to move forward.
Yeah.
There's no other way to move. So
Yeah, absolutely. You've had a rough week. I've had a rough life, Craig.
well, I think okay, you beat me. You beat me. Let's talk about that actually.
Thanks. Yeah. I have a lot of stuff that I've been really working through lately, and it's been really intense. So, yeah.
What do you got going on? What are you thinking?
I think just as I'm getting older and really working on myself, I have this like heightened awareness about my circumstances and why I have accepted certain things into my life and how I made really poor choices. They weren't poor overall because they got me here. But overall, they caused a lot of pain and suffering just due to a lack of awareness, ultimately.
I actually, it's interesting, and this is part of the stressor that I have. I've been trying to deal with book this concert for next Tuesday, actually, and it's raised a lot of stress within sort of my expansion and just really growing as a person. But it's interesting who I met along the way. I think it was just so beautiful because I think through experiences, there's always, it's interesting. I think we chatted about this before. When you change the way you look at something, what you look at changes.
Yeah, it does.
100%. And I think the more people that raise that awareness, I mean, it's so interesting. I was talking to my parents the other day, and they said to me again, they're like, why don't you just keep it simple? Why don't you just, and it's like everybody's going to the left. You have all the herd, the sheep herd just going to the left, and then you're the only one that goes to the right.
Yeah.
And it's like,
you're blazing a new trail.
I wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah, I get that. It's hard to blaze a new trail, especially when, our experiences, you have two options. You have the paved road, or you have the unknown, right? That you have to just wander on that, wander into that jungle and kind of find your own fruit and learn how to feed yourself and create your own inner consciousness. And I feel like this is what's really happening, particularly in amongst women right now. I just got tingles all over. It's still tingling. Wow. That's a yes.
That's what I love about you, is that you just feel. It's not. Now, I'll make this short. I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about how our mind works, and our mind influences. And what I just truly love about you, and it's so pure, is that it comes right from here.
Yeah. I'm very sensitive, and most of my life I put up this big brick wall, and I acted super masculine and very tough because I had, I guess, this anxiousness about me that knew that I ultimately wasn't safe. And I really had to, not consciously, but subconsciously, things just unfolded and my life just became a lot more clear. And I really had some big, epiphanies in the last few months where I was like, how did I get here? How did I, marry people, and how did I date guys who ultimately just didn't respect me and love me in a very normal capacity. And why did I always accept people who just treated me less than what I deserved? And here was what I ended up, kind of determining, was that although my parents did the best that they could, I wasn't truly loved in a way that was loving. I was loved to the best of their capacity, but I wasn't actually cared for and protected and shown that this is how you respect yourself. And I'll give you one example. When I was about 9 years old, my dad had a catering truck, and I remember being in the back of the catering truck making coffee. He had those big coffee machines, and this is like before food catering was a thing. My dad was very much an entrepreneur and, ahead of the game there. But I was in the back of the truck, bent over. I was probably between 9 and 11 years old, and I was making coffee, and his best friend grabbed my ass. And he was probably about 45.
That's not acceptable.
No. But when I told my dad, like, hey, he touched me in this manner, and that was just, the beginning of my boundaries being crossed, my dad just said, oh, yeah, Kenny's a bit of a pervert, blah, 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 blah. And so what it did was it reinstilled this lack of boundaries that I ended up carrying throughout the rest of my life. Because if a grown man was able to inappropriately touch a child, and I was told to accept it because this is just what it is, it led me down a really confusing path. And obviously, being a girl who I was obviously always autistic and different, and it just led me to this path of, accepting things that I never should have accepted because this is what I was shown. It was, it's fine. Just go through it. So when guys would give me weird advances or, treat me inappropriately, I would always just be okay with it and just go, well, this is okay. But
he's a little bit of a perv. No big deal.
He's a little bit of a perv.
Yeah,
That's
because you were used to it.
Yeah, I was used to it. But basically the meat of the situation was, if I had to look at how I was raised, which was definitely very loving by my mother, especially when I was younger, and very much put on a pedestal by my father, but I wasn't protected by them. Like, they loved me. I could do anything I wanted, and they'd be like, oh, I love you. You're great. You know what I mean? So I had that non-judgmental love, but I didn't have boundaries. And I'm not putting any blame on my parents because obviously they didn't have boundaries themselves, right? So it was left for me to figure this out. But if I had to actually look at that and look, okay, was this love? I would have to say, no, I wasn't quote unquote loved in the normal sense of like, I care for you, I'm going to protect you, I'm going to take care of you. Then I wasn't loved. And so if I had to look at that and be like, Amanda, you weren't loved, then I think that would have shattered me at the time. So I always just told myself they loved me to the best of their ability and this and that. But it's not how I love my children. And now I've done it's been a rough road because I've been on this journey. I think I stunted my evolution as soon as I had my first child because I had to focus on raising her. But if I had to look at that at such a young age, I think I would have been shattered to be like, okay, you're not lovable.
Well, it's so fascinating, we talk about, and it's interesting. The lovely Patrick, we call him Rasta Pat, actually, he's this Jamaican man that's just full of spirit, full of life, full of love. You would just absolutely adore him. I actually asked him to be on here at some point.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. We were talking about love, and we were talking about conditional and unconditional love, and how interesting that can be in certain perspectives. Where it's like, if you truly love somebody, it's like you don't put any conditions on them. You just say, "Hey, I love you." From A to Z, and whatever you do in between, I still love you. Like it's what we do with our children too. We love them, and they go to school, they get expelled, whatever. Okay, we still love you.
Yeah.
But what can we do to move forward to correct whatever has happened? So, did you feel that you were conditionally loved when you were younger?
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, because I feel like this is where we sit on the opposite ends of the fence here, Craig. Because I feel like I was unconditionally loved to the best of their ability. I feel like there was a little bit more conditions put on it. Craig, you have to behave like this, and then I'll love you.
Yeah.
For some reason, even though my parents didn't have the capacity to understand that I was at the time, nobody understood that even women could be autistic and perform in life as well as I did, but yet struggle. I can't do simple math. I couldn't read. I think my stepmom, Linda, was pretty much the only one that really clued in that there was something immensely wrong, because she was there for me for the first 3 years of me going into school, and she taught me how to read. She taught me how to write. She tried to give me boundaries, and guess what I thought those boundaries were?
Love.
No.
Oh.
No. I thought that because she was the only person in my life that was actually trying to love me, I resented her for it, and I thought that wasn't love.
Yeah, because you weren't used to it.
I wasn't used to it. I'm used to, doing whatever the hell I want, and
so you rebelled.
So
you rebelled.
Yeah, I rebelled from that sort of restrictive boundaries, because for me that wasn't love. If I looked at her as that being love, then everything else in my life would have not been love.
Wow.
Then I would have been real effed.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah. So what's happened right now in my life is, until I ultimately met you and Lucho.
Our lovely family here in the studio.
Yeah. I don't think I really understood what love really was. And
purely.
Yeah, purely, because I had always had these people in my life that I loved and I accepted, but because I was different and a little bit out there and outspoken and, made weird facial movements and things like that, they were always saying, like, don't. Like, that's not
just
okay.
don't.
Just don't. Like, yeah, like, so.
Don't be you.
So the last relationship I was in, he would even try and control my facial movements and just say, like, I'm a pretty girl. And he would be like, don't make those faces, and it's just like, I'm sorry, but like.
Conditional love.
Yeah. And then he would say, oh, you don't love me because you don't accept me wholeheartedly. And this is where the conditional, unconditional love gets really blurry for a lot of people. I feel like it's because my relationships, they would say, you're demanding and you don't love me unconditionally, which I do. Like, my ex is a total narcissistic, sick human being. But do I love him? Yeah, I do. And I did. I love him as a human who really had a lot of suffering. But I had some unconscious awareness that what was going on behind the scenes wasn't okay. And because I'm super intuitive, there was no facts. And I feel like this is where a lot of women are getting stumped right now, is they're looking for evidence. as to I'm going to prove to myself that you either love me or don't love me. And they disconnect from their being, and they look for the evidence rather than just tuning into
The
feeling of just going, something's not right.
Yeah.
And so I had that. I had enough of the feeling of being like, something isn't right. And then it wasn't until after pretty much every relationship that I was in ended did I see what was actually happening. And they were, messaging other women. They were engaging in flirting behavior. They were being sexually inappropriate. They, were, sleeping with people and then sleeping with me. And then my body would reject it and I'd get physically ill. And I had no real evidence until after. And then after the relationships would dissolve, I would see everything that was actually making me sick.
Pattern.
Yeah, the pattern, but also my health. So, right now I'm struggling with migraines. And I have basically struggled with migraines since I moved to BC. And because my girlfriend Anita was like, so, can you pinpoint when you had, when these started? And ironically, I could pinpoint it. And it was exactly when I stepped away from my family and was like, no, I'm not going to have this life.
I just want to say something real quick. You are doing everything perfectly. And I really feel that. And the reason why I say that is because it's so tough, in times of adversity, in times of toughness. We question ourselves, as I was today and every day. And people even question me. But I think when you're getting questioned and when everybody's against what you're doing the right thing. So you, my dear, you're just doing everything perfectly. Just keep doing what you're doing. And whoever doesn't want to stand beside you is not meant to be there.
Yeah. And I'm learning that, right? I'm learning that, I get to pick and choose the people who get to have access to me. Mm-hmm. And before, I used to think that if I didn't allow everybody to have access to me, then I was being rude. And that was just such a misconception. And my sister's always said to me, she's always said, Amanda, you just need, one or two good friends, and that's it. You don't need to have this whole net full of people. And I think the reason why I wanted that was, one, I accepted a lot of shitty behavior from quote unquote friends, but I just
belonging.
I guess there was a part of just, I didn't want to exclude people because I had the capacity to love them wholeheartedly, but I wasn't able to understand that although the evidence showed that they weren't loving me wholeheartedly, I still didn't create boundaries with them, and it allowed me to have not just one or two people in my life that didn't respect and honor me. It literally meant that everybody in my life, for the most part, minus maybe, 5 or 6 people, really had issues with me. And I allowed them into my life because I didn't actually have issues with them. You know what I mean? I would have issues with them after, say, we would hang out, and then they would go and do their thing, and then they'd all go and hang out together, and then I'd be like, oh, I wasn't invited to that. And, and I'd be like, that's weird. Like, I would never even go for dinner downtown with, one friend without, telling everybody, hey.
You want to include everybody.
I've always been very inclusive. But that being said, I am a really big personality, and just to own, my own stuff, I've done some really atrocious things in my life when I was unconscious. And I think that people think that I'm some sort of, that I personally think I'm a saint. Well, I do, more so now, just because I see my innocence in all of this. But I'm not dismissive to the fact that, one of the things that I did, which is just absolutely horrendous, was my best friend's, when I was growing up, my best friend at her wedding, I got super hammered. I hadn't drank because I just had my last son.
Free booze.
Yeah, and it was Moët in these like cute little bottles, and we were in Vegas, and she was getting married at that little mini church, and it was like amazing. And I was obsessed with her, like just loved her so, so much with all my heart. But that night after the wedding, I apparently hit on her husband. Yeah. Like I blacked out and, whatever. And I feel like behind my veil of consciousness, all my lack of boundaries and all my things would just, spill out over the top. This is why alcohol is a little bit demonic to me.
I think some of these moments actually, it's when you get blackout drunk and you're with somebody that really genuinely cares and really is just looking out for what's best for you. Those are your friends.
Yeah, and it was weird because, her sister brought me back to my hotel room, was like, no, like they identified that I was blackout drunk. And I think that became very clear when I was in, I think it was Caesar's Palace, and we're, going down the escalator, and her sister was a few steps in front of me, and I just like opened my arms and like free fell like I was going to fly.
Superman.
I pulled a Superman, and like, she caught me and brought me back to my room and stuff like that. And I remember the next morning waking up and just being like super hungover and, not remembering anything. And then, someone saying like, you hit on so-and-so and, you made a pass at him. And I was like, oh my God. And I feel like the part, like it's horrendous that I did that. Absolutely. But I feel like the part that really kind of was missing was the fact that, shortly thereafter, I quit drinking, and it's been, 13 years. So clearly I viewed that as
that moment.
I viewed that moment as something so awful and atrocious to me that I never wanted to put anybody in that situation, and I never wanted to be that person. And that's something that happens, right? I used to see this in my relationship with my ex. He, not my ex-husband, but the narcissist that I was with, covert narcissist, I used to see when he would drink how the blinders, the veils would come off of his caution and his character of who he made himself out to look like, and then the real monster. His whole family actually even had a name for him, because I forget what it was, but it was, I don't know, it was something disturbing.
There's a word for that.
What?
Comfortable.
Yeah, he got comfortable and his dark side came out. And that was for me too, my dark side would come out when I would have all the, caution to the wind torn away with alcohol. And then I would do these things that were really out of character for me. But luckily for me versus, him and other people, they just keep it in the closet, right? They're like, okay. And we don't know what's going on here.
Some sort of beat happening here, guys. Oh, that's a metronome.
It's that speaker.
I think it's a metronome on GarageBand.
There we go. That was funny.
I was just getting a beat going there.
Yeah, me too.
Lucho, that was from you, man. That was great. That's awesome. That metronome actually leads me to my next question. I love how we just go right through this. We're just like power through it. So how do you stay uncomfortable in relationships then? Because, you know, it's interesting you mentioned comfort, and comfort seems to cause a lot of issues, but how do you stay uncomfortable?
Well, you're speaking to the right person because I was uncomfortable in every single relationship I was in because I basically...
In the right way, though.
No.
No, I mean, how do you stay comfortable in the right way?
Okay, so I have to start with the uncomfortable. I chose everybody that made me feel uncomfortable because I was picking people from a wounded place, and I was accepting behaviors, and I was letting them talk me into it, being like, oh, I did this because of this, and oh, this is normal, and oh, this is, you're being too hard, and you're being too this. But like intuitively I knew. And now I'm starting to get comfortable with having boundaries, with having, I don't need evidence to know that something's not right, because my body is an energetic force and I feel it. So I don't need, you know, when people ask me out on dates and, you know, ask me to do things and I'm like, no, I'm not into it. It's not because anything about them is wrong. It's just because the energy feed that's coming in at this point, I'm not denying. And I'm like, you're perfectly fine. Just stay over there. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's got to do with it maybe influencing your needs as well. Because, you know, each one of us as, you know, beings, we have needs. You know, mine are to grow and to give, right? And your needs may be different. I mean, there's so many. There's certainty, there's uncertainty, variety, there's love, there's contribution, there's growth, and there's just so many things that influence our decisions and any decision we make, right?
Yeah, and I wanted all those things. Literally everything you named off were things that I wanted in a relationship. However, because I had such low standards and no boundaries, I wasn't able to see that, you know, Amanda, you're unhealed, you know, you're allowing people to come in and infiltrate your life. And I was, you know, very unconditional with, you know, wanting to start a life with, you know, people and to build this thing. And all I needed was you just show up and you're going to get the world. But I had this ability to know that something was wrong. Something was up, you know, and my ex would say to me like, oh, you weren't really in this. What are you talking about? As soon as I met you, I listed my house. I was going to sell it. I was going to move to Squamish. I was going to, you know, move in with you. And the universe was like, dropped a hammer. Like the markets were hot. Okay. They were hot.
You don't want me talking about markets because you know what happens.
I know. We're not going there. But the markets were hot in the housing market. And the universe was like, absolutely not. For whatever reason, my house was literally the stopping point where no houses sold. It was wild.
Something was saying something.
Absolutely. You know, the universe was like, no, you are not selling your house. You are not going there, you know, this and that. And, you know, it was the hardest relationship of my life. And everyone's just like, move on, move on. It's like, no, covert narcissism is deadly. A lot of people don't get out alive because they either take their own life or, you know, their partners actually murder them. Like it's actually a major issue. But the universe was like, absolutely not. You're not going there. And from that experience, the amount of pain that it had caused me, it ultimately created this transformation for me. It allowed me to experience so much pain and suffering and awareness as to my lack of boundaries and how I was accepting garbage and trying to turn it into gold. You know, like I'm an alchemist, but, you know, I'm not that good.
So your belief, like, how do you create your own beliefs as of today? Like, where's your safe space? Where's home for Amanda?
Home is definitely within myself. I don't create a home outside of me at this point. I am basically building the foundation within myself right now. And just, I had to walk through just a tremendous amount of pain and suffering. And I had to sit in it. And I had an energy worker that I would call, and, I would go see Joanna, and, she's amazing. I highly recommend her. She's in North Van, and I'd love to actually have her on here because
I'd love to like just sit with her for 5 minutes and just to see. I mean, like,
I think we need to have her on. I hadn't thought about having her on because I haven't been seeing her because she's been kind of making me do my own work. I think
which is good, right?
Yeah, like I would just go and then she'd clear me, and then I'd like, whatever. And then in the last probably 2 years for sure, she'd be like, no, I'm booked, I'll work on you remotely and you'll figure it out, like, and she would give me some exercises, like grounding exercises. But what I think a lot of people don't understand is that when we have these experiences in our life, they store in our body. It gets stored in our cells, and this is what actually ends up creating a lot of disease and health issues, is because we are accepting things that we really shouldn't be accepting because we're disconnected, right? We're in the matrix. But once we unplug, we have the ability to tune into ourselves. And that's why I'm like really trying to tune in, because I still have this matrix and situation going on that's still causing me health issues with my migraines. So yesterday I had a beautiful day. We were in Seychelles, and, I was with, my girlfriend, and, we had a really, great day. But at the end of the day, I started to get a migraine. It was just like 16 hours of working, and it was a beautiful day, but something happened. I couldn't reach my son. And then within moments of not being able to reach him, I could just feel like this pulse, going in my side of my neck. And I was getting really anxious about not being able to reach him. And by the time I got home, I had a full-blown migraine. I was not feeling well. And, and so I'm still really learning how, even though I'm like, okay, your son's fine, he's at home, he's in airplane mode, whatever, like,
yeah.
But, so I'm still kind of working through that.
I find a lot of myself, and what I'm trying to practice a lot now is really just creating that certainty and belief in myself and everything that I'm involved with. Because I believe that, we only have we have each other, but, I'll help me for you if you help you for me. I think that's the best way to explain it. And I seen something the other day that was really fascinating to me. And it was talking about the key to rendering service to others. How do we master life? How do we master, how do we get that gold trophy on the fireplace? How do we get, all these things? How do we create a fortune?
Yeah.
And it really just comes down to rendering service.
Yeah, I completely agree, with one condition.
Don't condition me. We're unconditional here.
The thing is that I did that, what you're talking about.
With the wrong people.
With the wrong people, because the one condition is you have to have boundaries.
Yes.
You have to have boundaries around what is truly loving for yourself.
Yes.
Yes.
So I agree.
If we want to really be of service, and that's obviously been, one of my big things in my life, is I always just want to give to others and, help others grow and learn. But without the boundaries around what's okay for me and what I allow into my life, I couldn't really tap into my full potential to give back to others, because I had too much shit in my life that I was having to navigate because of my lack of boundaries. But, it's game time now. And
Look out, guys. This is going to get wild.
yeah, absolutely. Because now I have these boundaries and I can decipher, who I'm going to let into my life. And it's quite fascinating because once we put those in, it eliminates a lot of the toxicity that was drawing energy from me, and it was leaving me depleted because I was always navigating like, they did this is weird, why would someone do that, this person did that, this was strange, why would they do that, because I was genuinely coming from a loving place, but I was trying to install boundaries with people that ultimately were struggling themselves, which is okay. But if someone's not receptive, like if I say, hey, this is my boundary, I really would appreciate this, from you, I would hope that you would listen and then do your best to help me so that we can both be comfortable and move forward. But I was choosing people that unfortunately had, so much trauma in their lives that they couldn't look at. Like I had to look at how I was raised and how I was treated. And, if something as, truly minute as someone grabbing my butt and, inappropriately messed with me and my whole, persona. And granted, there was, lots of situations that were much worse than that I experienced after. But how do you do that when, say, you're dealing with someone who's been like sexually abused immensely, or say had, a parental figure sexually assaulting them, the amount of awareness that you would have to create, it would be devastating, right? So that's why these people crack and they create like multiple personalities. This is how narcissism develops. It's, you have parents in your life that are ultimately conditioning you to accept them, but what they're doing is not acceptable. It's like, you must accept me, I'm your parent, but I'm going to sexually abuse you, or I'm going to do this and that. And then you go out into the world and there's this genuine like, poor me, because poor you,
It's so funny you mention that because my dad used to always say this one thing, and I'll never forget it. He always said, do as you're told, not as I do.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I know. And I think I've actually been guilty of that too. It's like, I'm going to do this. You don't do this. You do what I tell you to do. And I've been, a very imperfect parent, I tried that one and it doesn't work. So it's like really, I had to heal myself. And I feel like what's happening in the world right now with women, because I have so many people reaching out to me on a global scale, and they're all kind of going through the same thing of being the subject or the magnet for narcissists. And, alls I can say is, everyone would be like, well, what's the common denominator? It's me, right? And so alls I can say to, everybody else and all the other women that are going through this, there's no shame in the game that, you are the common denominator, but at the same point in time, you don't have to accept this. And as soon as you start putting in boundaries and loving yourself and knowing that, that there's people out there that are capable and willing to love you and treat you wholeheartedly the way you deserve, you don't have to accept any of this, crap. And you're going to evolve and blossom so much faster and into, a unique, beautiful flower versus, your generic whatever, flower that's just everywhere, right? You're going to have something unique about you because you're not going to be like the rest. You're going to have boundaries and self-love and awareness and critical thinking and intuition. And these are things that the Matrix really doesn't want you to have because, you and I both know, being autistic, that get in the box.
Yeah.
get in the box
And stay there.
and stay there. And I've never been capable of that because of the autism. It always seemed very unusual. I was like, why?
I actually want to ask you, you sent me something that I absolutely adored about staying childlike.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, we had talked about it before. This was super random because I had said to you, you're like, I just feel childlike. I'm like, dude, you need to stay childlike. Like that's the key. That is the key. You need to stay like a child because children come into this world, from the divine, and they are childlike, and they are the closest to God, and they have the most power and the most, ability to manifest,
create,
and to create, because they are the closest sources to divinity. And, I'd said, I gave Elon Musk as an example. Now, I don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy, but he is childlike. and he's very successful on a global scale. Everybody knows who he is.
Yeah.
And I gave you that example. And then all of a sudden I got this thing in my feed that was, comparing Elon Musk to a child. And this is his success is as a result of that. And I feel that it's one of those things with autism that naturally autistic people are closer to that divinity because of their childlike nature. And I think that other people who have had, different incarnations, they come in this world and they come here and they go, okay, well, we sense something's different about you. You're not like me. I have all this guardedness and blah, 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 and you're free. And then they alienate you, right? And they treat you differently. But I think it's because ultimately they know that there's something very deep and powerful within those particular people like you and I and, hundreds of thousands of other people that have the capacity to understand that I'm not going to have my childlike nature ripped out from under me because this is my power.
Wow. I just want to let you know that, you read my Instagram post this morning, I think.
Yeah.
And you sent me a message.
Yeah.
I actually feel a lot better. I really do.
Good.
And I needed this.
Good.
And I think it's important for us to do this for not only us, but for everybody. And, I think it's so important to, I lost my train of thought, by the way. Yeah, I was going deep and I lost my train of thought. But, I think really, I think growth is just, it's such, like for me, just kind of going back to the belief thing there. I think, as we develop our inner belief and really just grow as a person and again, rendering service, it all goes back to that. It just all goes back to serving.
Yeah. Yeah. I took this nail course and I loved it. And this woman who taught me was incredible. Hit me up if you ever want to be a nail tech, because I know the best girl in the world, Keisha, I think her last name's Carpenter, Electric Nails. I'm not sure if that's her brand still.
Electric Nails.
But anyhow, she is like the best of the best of the best. And I took that class because I wanted to figure out how to make money. And during the pandemic, I was like, oh, this would be great. I can, sneak people into my home and still make money kind of thing. But at the end of the day, there was always this thing that was like, Jesus washed feet. Jesus washed feet. And I'm not a religious person, although I have 2 crosses on me, but I do have a connection to some sort of higher power. And I feel like I ultimately wanted to take that class not because I wanted to do hands and nails, but because I had this connection with washing feet and being of service. And, if
frogs,
yeah. And if one of the, biggest figures in the world is Jesus, I've always had this tie to him, even though I was raised, atheist. I knew deep down I wanted to be of service. And, it's a bit like offside because I'm not actually doing that. But at the same point in time, I still understand that being of service is really where it's at, helping others.
Yes. That's, For me, it's been a long journey. I've really, I mean, I've had the jobs. I've actually worked many jobs, and I wanted more. I just wanted more. I didn't know how to get more, but I just wanted more, and I still want more. I still just want more, but my reasons have changed. My purpose have changed. Why do I want more? Is the reason why I want more is to give it to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. And I feel like I've accumulated these experiences in my life so that ultimately I can give it back, and to help others. And we've had some private conversations where I feel like they were really beneficial, in regards to like awareness in our, capacity of, giving back. And one of the things I had experienced in my relationships, because they were, usually with covert narcissists, was they were always being of service to other people, making other people happy. And yet the person who was truly going to make their life better and love them wholeheartedly and, build this beautiful, elaborate life, they weren't focused on me at all whatsoever. They were always trying to use other people to get higher and higher. And it's like, I don't think you understand how powerful I am. If you just invest in me, we're going to do great things. But before that, I had to invest in myself. So,
Well, I mean, you look at the whole situation with, our world situation with the U.S. and China and Mexico and all these countries that are battling each other, and it's just a big battle in terms of
Russia,
money.
Ukraine.
It's
you
money.
forgot about Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, that's a big one too. It's just a big. Can you imagine if these two countries got along together? Like, hey, let's just get along.
But
where would the world be?
Well, the world is a bunch of narcissists running it. And, unfortunately, this is just on a much bigger scale. We're seeing, political leaders trying to manipulate and control to get what they want, right? They want the oil, they want the gas, they want the babies.
Power.
They want the power. They want to, put nuclear plants in Ukraine and then, blame other countries, Russia, for bombing the Ukraine when it's like, Putin has his own, issues, but at the same point in time, he was smart enough to know that it wasn't a good idea to have a nuke plant right beside his country. And basically dealing with, I'm sorry for all the Ukrainian people, that are going to be offended by this, but at the end of the day, that was a baby making factory that was shipping babies to the United States for, toxic, really unbelievably sick, and most people can't comprehend the reasons, but so I won't get into it. But it was a country that was basically being fed money to feed power in the United States.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have things that I want to say as well regarding the situation in Canada and China and whatnot and the U.S., but I cannot speak openly about this. But I definitely do recognize, and I've got some inside information. Well, it's just I have like inside details and information that I can't really speak about.
Yeah.
But it's we can talk about it offline, but it's just unbelievable how in terms of power, in terms of money, just how corruption can happen. And actually, I was talking to Lucho, our lovely, our creative director has his lovely lady here, and it's funny, we were having a little session earlier, and I was trying to learn Spanish, she was trying to learn English, but we were actually talking about corruption, and we were talking about how basically you get pulled over by the cops, and here's a $500 bill, or 500 pesos or whatever. I don't know what the translation of the money is, but pesos. Essentially, yeah, like here's 100 pesos. See you later. Have a good day. Yeah. Corruption right there. And where does that go? That goes to their pocket, because their pocket can't get filled because the government doesn't pay them enough, and the government takes their money and does whatever they want with it. And
yeah, it's just I had this funny story.
It's just nuts.
I used to have this really flashy car, and it had tinted windows because I was always in the States, and in the States you can black it out, right? Like you can completely black it out. So I had all the windows tinted, and I can remember this one day I was driving, and because my my vehicle was completely murdered out, I would always have to roll down the windows whenever I went down by a cop, because you could have the back ones really dark. So of course I roll down my windows.
What a rebel.
I see this cop like around the corner, and so I smiled at him. And
Oh, you're trying to pick him up too.
I wasn't actually.
Like at the wedding.
I wasn't actually. And my girlfriend, I won't name who, but she is a police officer. And, you know, she calls him the Miami Vice cop because he wears like a badge around his neck. He's gonna come after me for sure if he ever sees this.
Oh, geez.
But he ended up, I drove by him and I had to roll down my window because I knew that I had these, you know, blacked out windows. So I smiled at him because I was just like, hey. Next thing you know, he pulls me over, gives me this massive ticket, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, wow, that really backfired. Like the one time I tried to like be nice, you know, and like smile friendly, I ended up with this major ticket and I had to go have my tint removed before I could insure my car. It was a pain in the ass, but
yeah, that's yeah.
It was just one of those funny experiences. But I think, you know, what have we got here? 45 minutes. So, you know, I just kind of wanted to wrap this up because, and I feel like this is a topic that we could come back to again, because it's like the froth on the top of my everything right now, is just this evolution of self. And, you know, it's not just affecting me, it's on a global scale. You know, Iranian women are going through this, right? A lot of women internationally are reclaiming their power and ultimately fighting back. And it's a global thing. And it's still, even though we have it better here in Canada, it's still happening here in Canada as well, right? Mm-hmm. We're being suppressed and women are accepting less than they deserve because how the system is set up, it's set up just to sit there, be pretty, accept this toxic masculinity, when in reality, you know, we have a heightened awareness somewhere deep within our DNA that something's wrong, you know, and we see this on, I see this, my girlfriend brought up podcasts. A lot of male podcasters talk about like women are messed up. They're this, they're a bunch of hoes. And
I think everybody's pretty fucked, to be honest.
Yeah. And truly everybody, you know, is going through a big evolutionary process right now. But I feel like, you know, these men that are, you know, speaking on podcasts and stuff, and they're going and they're basically degrading women and talking about, you know, how women are whores and this and that. And I think, well, how did we get here, motherfucker? Like, seriously.
From my ball sack.
Yeah, like, seriously. It's like, we got here because of this process of suppressing women and creating, it's like, if you want to know why women are going out there sleeping with a bunch of men, it's because they thought that was powerful.
Yeah. It goes back to power. It just really
and it
goes
is.
back
They're
to power.
right. They're right. Sexual energy is the ultimate power.
Yeah.
Right? It truly is. If you have that Kundalini sexual energy going, you will be the most powerful house and the most powerful person in the room. However, if you're giving away your Kundalini and your energy to absolutely every, you know, narcissist that comes knocking, guess what ends up happening to you? You got nothing. And you're not able to actually create the life that you want because you're just constantly accepting shit that you shouldn't be accepting. And I understand, like, you know, we have these, we're so disconnected from our intuition. And if there's one thing I can just possibly say that anyone can take away from this, it's that you don't need the evidence to walk away. If something in your gut is telling you that there's something immensely wrong and you're just going, no, this doesn't feel right, chances are they're probably having an innocent female friendship. You know, like my ex had several females that he was friends with behind my back because he knew I wasn't okay with it. But guess what happened? You know, he was overlapping me with other women that he was grooming to use because I wasn't going to, I was originally able, like, you could use me, but soon as I started to see that I was not being treated respectfully, I started putting boundaries up, and then he needed to move on, right?
Yeah.
And people would think, oh, Amanda, you're so messed up, he broke your heart and blah 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 blah. I left that, like, the tables actually weren't he left me, I left him. And I was so messed up in the end because I had accepted this, and it was just such a low level of love and respect, but ultimately it led me here. So the one thing, if women can take away from this podcast today, it's just, you don't need the evidence. Just trust your intuition, and everything's going to get a lot better. It's going to be painful and rough, but it'll get a lot better.
This has been a great chat. I'm super happy. I love I love these chats. There's so much in them. And really, thank you so much for being a part of this. I knew right away that you were going to be so special for this journey. So, I just want to thank you. And, I love, for me, there's just so much in you to give. And that's what's fascinating, is this is just the beginning. So
yeah, it is. Well, thank you, Craig. And I knew you were very special too, just FYI. And,
thank you, my dear.
I'm very happy to be a part of this, and I feel very honored to have been asked to be a part of this. And, the one thing I am really good at is showing up. I do struggle with my health still, so I'm still battling that. But I just feel really blessed, and I'm looking forward to the day when we can take this to the next level and really, help so many other people become aware and to learn how to grind through those really tough experiences in life, so that we can all find that pearl that ultimately is going to be, the game changer.
Amen. I can't say anything to that. So with that, we will leave that. And I don't think there's anything better that I can say to that. So thank you guys for tuning in. Much love to all of you guys. And just want to give a huge shout out to our creative director, Lucho, as well. Just sitting behind that desk, just, putting it every single Thursday. We're here just putting it together. Super grateful for you and the team and everything. So.
And I got one more thing just to put in there, is that, this space that we work out of, it's Lucho's space, and he is, a genuinely incredible human being. And he's has this space so that other people can also utilize their voice. And if anybody does have this burning desire to do a podcast or to speak, and it doesn't have to be on a regular committed basis, you can even just contact me. I'll put you in contact with Lucho, and then the 2 or 3 or whoever it is, because you're a part of it, obviously, with sound and stuff like that. We can all come together and we can help everybody who wants to pursue their own podcasts.
Let's do it.
Because I feel like, it's not just us who have something to say. There's a lot of people, but they don't know how to go about doing it. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you that we are the dream team, and we're going to make your dreams come true. So you just have to reach out and we can make it happen.
All right, guys, with that, we're out. Peace.
Peace.